Welcome to the Amazon Legends podcast, where we have real stories about making it big on Amazon. Our guests are CEOs of large companies and entrepreneurs who became powerful sellers, also experts specializing in helping sellers, and both former and current Amazon employees who will give us an insight from behind the scenes. Here's your host, Nick Urison.
Welcome to another episode of Amazon Legends. My next guest today is a supply chain and warehousing expert with experience living around the world, especially after spending 17 years in Shenzhen in China. He knows exactly how these things work, and so he knows how they should work. So he now here runs the show himself. He's a former Amazon seller as well, so he knows exactly what it takes to build an Amazon operation. Now the co-founder of ShipItDone 3PL warehouses. When he's not working, is passionate about barbecue and different cultures and traveling and food. So I don't know how he finds time to do all this and being in 3PL business. So everybody meet my guest, Marshall Taplits. Welcome to the show, Marshall.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it. I really appreciate the invite.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So, we always talk about 3PL. So it's kind of it's become part of the formula today because no entrepreneur wants to be in fulfillment business. Plus the inventory limits, the storage limits that Amazon imposes on everybody. There is no more give it to the manufacturer and have them ship it directly to Amazon. So 3PL has to be part of the equation. In addition, if you don't want to do the fulfillment yourself, you're selling through your Shopify website or whatever or other marketplaces, you need a 3PL. So we know that 3PL is in the picture, but we don't really know how to pick a good 3PL. So you're going to give us all the secrets about how to identify a good 3PL when you're doing your shopping around. So tell us, what is the recipe?
Okay, that's a good question. So I listen to a lot of your podcasts, and a theme that I hear, and especially like the last one, what was his name? Bernard Nader. He was talking about the PPC. It was all about trying to find where to put the money in terms of the PPC. And I think if you look at 3PLs in a similar way, it's like if you identify the products that a 3PL can put you in another class by having, then it's not just a cost, it's actually a revenue driver. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you had an idea for a product. These are clickers. I'm just picking random thing off my desk, but you want to count boxes and it comes in all different colors. But let's say you wanted to sell like a 5-pack of it, right? You could make that in China, import it, send it into Amazon. But then, what if a 25-pack would have sold? You would have had to also in China make a 25-pack, and then what if you wanted to test a variety of different colors? You would have also had to make, different packs in China, MOQs, very complicated. But if you take your main SKU and you send it into FBA, and then you have your warehouse, your 3PL, build on a per order basis as they come in with FBM, and you generate all different SKUs, for example, with different colors and pack quantity sizes, you can now go to market with 15 different SKUs. Maybe 2 or 3 were done in China that you consider your main, and you start that off with FBA, but now you've got like an army behind you. But you didn't have to prepare all those SKUs. You just had to give the individual components. So the supplier, the 3PL will put that together on the fly. Will it be more expensive than having made it in China in bulk? Of course, but at least you get to test all these different combinations with a relatively low cost. So that's just one way that you can use a 3PL, not just to increase your costs and have more storage, but to actually enhance the speed at which you can take product to market. So that's just one idea. And I think if you find a supplier, a 3PL, and you consider them like a supplier and you think what value add can they bring to the table, that is what you're looking for in a 3PL as much as you can, not just a warehouse that can move pallets in and out.
So when you approach 3PLs, they usually talk about we have so many locations, we can store so much or whatever. So what you are saying is look at the services that they offer alongside with bundling, with pack kitting and things like that. Those are the things that will add value to what they ordinarily do, which is what every other 3PL does, right? That's what you're talking about.
That's right, exactly. And also, because no matter how you slice it, a lot of traffic comes from Amazon. So most people want to start with Amazon, but they also want to get a Shopify site open, and they also want to, sell wherever else they want to sell. But you kind of have to set up a certain level of infrastructure with a 3PL in order to start to do these other channels and do these other advanced things. But it's not always worth it in the beginning to lay that infrastructure. And so people get dependent just on FBA. So I'm suggesting that, you figure out how to increase your SKUs and increase your value that you're bringing to the customer, and make that part of your business case for setting up the infrastructure you need in order to grow those other channels. One other idea that I've recently heard, which is just a sales call, but we're talking with a potential customer who, for example, is in the apparel industry, and they want to offer personalization, so that for an additional $30 or whatever they're going to charge, I just made up the number, we can actually do an embroidery on their product. So an FBA, you can buy the product, but with FBM, we'll have an automatic embroidery machine here. When the order comes in, we do it and then send it out. So now that is something that can bring significantly more revenue. Maybe it's a gift now instead of just a product, and it's personalized. And so that's another way you can leverage a 3PL in order to grow your capabilities, really.
Yeah. So this is actually an idea that we kind of, I don't want to say experimented with, but I'm familiar with it, put it that way. But it all comes down to a program Amazon calls Amazon Custom.
That's
so
right.
Amazon Custom is Amazon offers customization of any item. So you can upload the main item, and then you can pick and choose different customization you want. So it could be just text, could be a picture or whatever, and then they can be put on the item. So basically the customer, the buyer, designs what they want in their customization. So now that becomes an order. Of course, that cannot be FBA for starters. It has to be FBM. So that means that whoever is fulfilling the order, they have to pick the master item and then log into Seller Central and then pull down the customization info and then customize accordingly and then ship it. So you're suggesting if you find a 3PL that can do that, now you can offer customization, custom products. Now, what we did was at the time, this is a few years ago now, a client of ours sold storybooks, personalized storybooks, like Alice Goes to Wonderland, right? So suddenly Alice Goes to Wonderland became Jane Goes to Wonderland for your daughter called Jane.
Exactly.
So the whole book becomes about Jane. So what we did was we said, okay, let's do a research on the most commonly used
names.
And then we pre-configured X number of them, like 10 each.
That's right.
Sent it to FBA. And then we also added another variation, except that variation was the custom FBM SKU. So we could collect. So the plan was, let's keep an eye on what is being ordered on the custom and then pre-print a bunch of them and send it to FBA. So ideally transition from FBM to FBA as you build some historical data.
That's right.
So you are saying that can be done now with partnership with a 3PL.
Exactly. And you can even stick with your existing strategy. If you know you have a certain amount of demand for, James and Jim and, whatever other names are popular, then, you can still get those printed, but then there's still an overflow where you're going to get random names and then those can be made on the fly. And if you sense demand, over a period of time, you can always have those made as well. It's kind of like with plastics, right? You can do a 3D print, or you can do a molding injection. It's just, you want to set up a tooling for it, right? So it's kind of the same thing, I just think that, especially for us, because we have so many customers that take advantage of the FBM UPS rates and everything through Seller Central. So we're used to logging in, as an example, into tens of customer accounts every day, and pulling down the labels, printing the packing lists, and already using the Seller Centrals. So if a customer wanted to take advantage of some of these personalization things, it's not something we're currently doing now. We're starting to do it, but that's something that I think is very interesting, and I think it's a way where we can add value and essentially be a manufacturer in a sense, because we're doing last mile processing.
Right.
And so you can consider your 3PL not just as a warehouse, but actually a US supplier who can help enhance things and put together packs and things like that on the fly and do personalization, which you just simply can't do if the lead time is 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
It is kind of a new capability that I think sellers can build through the use of 3PLs.
Yeah. So, Marshall, when you and I talked, when we connected, you also mentioned about picking a 3PL. You mentioned their receiving process. So, study their receiving process. So, tell us if that's part of the criteria, and what are you looking at? What are you looking for? So
we find that most issues, whether it's, we sent the wrong SKU, or the inventory doesn't match, or the customer got the wrong item, or whatever it is, it's like 99.9% of the time it goes back to the receiving process. Most warehouses, the receiving is just done by barcode. And, if you are super organized and you have everything perfectly barcoded so that they can just scan it in at a carton level, that's fantastic. You're probably fine with any warehouse. But, a lot of these sellers, they have a lot of SKUs. They're either working across factories, or the factories are doing the first production, and, the boxes or the cartons are labeled incorrectly. It's the wrong dimensions. The quantity within it is not the same. Sometimes they'll have an entire pallet that's all one item, but then buried in the middle is one carton of another item that you would never know. Or, they sent it with pallets labeled with what's in each pallet, but somewhere along the way it was repalletized, and it's not like that anymore. And the bottom line is it takes a tremendous amount of time to receive properly, So what we do now is we have the customers create the items in advance in our system, and then create an inbound order, get labels from our system that they apply to those boxes on the supplier side. And not only does it make it easier for us to scan it in and make sure everything's accurate, but also gives the supplier a last chance to identify any issues that they've done in the packing. Because, once they have to physically put the right labels on the right cartons, and it says how many should be in each pack and everything, it's a great way to do a last minute check before it leaves the factory as well. I think receiving is very important.
So when you are interviewing these 3PLs, other than asking them to describe their receiving process, what are some key points that they should look for?
I would say, what do you do if a discrepancy is found? What do you do if a box has multiple items in it? Like, for example, if it's, all cartons of 10, and then the last one is, a mixed carton of whatever was left, right? That happens a lot. Or, what do you do if you're expecting 20 cartons, but, one of them only has 15 items instead of the 16 that it's supposed to? Do you have any processes to identify that? Is there any format of data that you have to provide to them in advance? And what are they going to give you back in terms of confirmation that, that they received correctly? A lot of the newer warehouses, they start with a system from day one where you, can get your own login, see the inventory, and that obviously is very helpful. But surprisingly, a lot of the larger warehouses, it's still a big deal even to just get access to log in and see your inventory. So, make sure that that function is available. And if you don't see your inventory correct, make sure you let them know quickly, because, it's easier to find problems when they recently happened. So I think really just drill into, what do you do in this situation? How do you communicate that to us? How do we know if this didn't match? What happens if we didn't get you the packing list in time?
And when you ask those questions, what should be the right answer?
Sometimes it's not the right answer as much as just the fact that you can envision this happening and you're comfortable with how they would approach it, right? Like if I say, what do you do if one of them has 16 and, they're supposed to have 17, and they say, well, was there any way to identify it on the carton? I would say, yes, there would be a red strap around it. Okay. We'll put in the notes for that product that, we'll look for the red strap. If you say, no, there's no way to identify it, you just have to look for one. Is that okay with you if they miss it? Are you going to pay them extra to make sure that they keep an eye on that? What is the situation? Are you just going to trust that one of them is 16? So you agree together that you're entering it in as one is 16, even though the rest are 17. Just that there's a feeling that they own the data and that they own what they said they have, right?
Yeah.
Because it's hard to keep everything up to date with things flying all around. And again, if it comes down to, a lot of the dead bodies come when there's only a few left in stock, right? Because it's like, there should be one. Oh, where is it? Right. Oh, it came in on a return. Oh, that was damaged. Oh, it wasn't marked damaged. Or, there's a variety of things that can happen. So just having this back and forth and making sure that receiving is done right every time, at least then if a problem happens, something really happened and it's not just that it was received incorrectly.
Yeah. Okay, I understand. So obviously, if you ask, what happens as something like this happens, and you get 17 instead of 16, or the package is broken, or I say, oh, I don't know, we'll let you know.
And another one is aliases. Like, for example, if there's a SKU that you call it with the manufacturer, and that's how you want to communicate it to us, but on Amazon, it's sold under this other SKU, and sometimes it's a randomly generated FN SKU, and sometimes it's something you named it, but it might be different than the manufacturer SKU. And then when you sell it on Shopify, it's different yet again. And then if you sell it under a different SKU, now it's a pack that includes these other SKUs in a kit. Just, make sure that your 3PL is able to handle these complexities, and keep everything accurate.
So
I'm not saying we do it perfectly. It's always, we're always improving, but these are the complexities that have to be dealt with in an omni-channel environment.
Yeah. So I heard you mention the word data a few times. So you're referring to the inventory really as data, which is really what it is at the end of the day, because as far as the sellers are concerned, once they get a 3PL, they never get to see the merchandise. Instead, they have the data. So it's an interesting to hear from a 3PL guy to refer to it as data, because to you it's work, right? It's touch, feel, move around, and everything else. So since it's data, systems are involved. So what is your take on what kind of an integration should exist between the seller and 3PL?
It's also a very good question, because there's so many ways to approach it. The real question, I think, is, first, is the 3PL the only inventory you have? Because if it is, then you should put more of the integration with the 3PL to make sure that the selling channels are updated with the correct inventory and that everything is operating. But if you have multiple warehouses, or you do some from home and you do some from a 3PL, or you do some from FBA and you do some from 2 3PLs, whatever, you have to decide if your company needs to be the one to manage that middleware, right? In order to be able to communicate with your different supply channels and your selling channels. So, and it also depends on the IT capability of each company. So I think it's there's no set answer, but for me as a brand owner, I would want to own as much of the technology as possible and let the 3PLs either use our system or build the integration to it. I think that owning your own platform and your own data as the master is a competitive advantage for any brand that will pay off over time. Can't tell you exactly how, but that's just my feeling. But if you're only using one 3PL and you're have a good relationship and you're in it for the long haul with them, getting and using their systems to manage all your inventory, it can save you money, it could save you time, and it's just kind of something that comes along with the 3PL service that usually you don't have to really even pay for, or small money. So depends on each company.
Yeah. So my background being systems, so the approach I take is I'm interested to hear what your take on this is. So typically what I say to my clients is, listen, don't do FBM. Rule that out. It's especially at the beginning. Don't get into FBM. Get a 3PL that becomes your warehouse. Have everything shipped to 3PL. And then on your accounting system, set up everything with inventory tracking and use FBA. So what happens is, if you are starting at the beginning and you want to be very light on the systems, and because each one is money, right? The money is not the subscription you pay the software, but it's the implementation, it's the expertise, the integration, all that stuff. So don't worry about order management system. Don't worry about inventory management system. Just get a good accounting system that can do inventory accounting, not management, but accounting. And then use FBA, and then have 3PL create the FBA shipments. Now, at the end of every month or at any point in time, you have the systems that connect to Amazon to check the inventory levels. So let's say at the end of the month, you're closing the books, then you can read the inventory levels. The rest is at 3PL, and you can create the reporting accordingly. But the minute that you start to build up inventory, now you're starting to build more sales volume, and you're looking into maybe website or other marketplaces. At that point, get an order/inventory management system that can manage multiple locations. At that point, I say to them, pick a system that can integrate with 3PLs.
Yes.
So first, do you agree with that approach?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more pro FBM than you might be, but in terms of the process of when to get those systems and take that on, yeah, I agree. Okay.
So now that we are on the same page of when to do it, and that you get an inventory management system that integrates with 3PLs, can you share with us some universally known inventory management systems that 3PLs would be readily integrated?
Well, this is the challenge that one of the challenges I found in the market is if you want a good inventory management system that integrates with the selling channels and all these things, it can easily cost you $2,000 or $3,000 a month for these softwares. ShipHero makes a great piece of software, but it's like $1,900 a month. There's 3PL Central, which they just got bought or rebranded as Extensive. I mean, that's a phenomenal 3PL warehouse management system that has all these capabilities, but again, thousands of dollars, implementations and all this. So I don't know if there's really anything that's out there that's that's good for a startup that doesn't have a high barrier to entry. To be honest, we're working on a 3PL WMS system for our own warehouse. That if it's good, we'll make it a SaaS product in the future. But it's just, for some reason, the platforms that are out there, they still seem to be like full corporate implementations, as opposed to like you go into ShipStation, you want to connect your Shopify, you just click a couple buttons and it just starts syncing the orders. And then when you put the tracking number, it sends it to Shopify. I mean, it's super easy. For some reason, the warehouse management systems that, really manage the inventory and the syncing to the selling channels. So these kind of OMS, order management system, and WMS, warehouse management system, it's still very manual to set up each interface, and, got to get the implementation team going and everything. So yeah, it's tough to find what you're looking for.
So for the listeners' benefit, I'm not endorsing in any way, but as I work with my clients, some software, these are all SaaS products. You pay the monthly subscription. They came up, and I did my work, and they seem to have the functionality. Like one is SKU Vault.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So SKU Vault comes readily integrated with 3PLs.
Right.
Another one I came across is Finale, like Finale inventory. That's another one. And then ShipItDone was another one. So those, and these were not priced as high as you mentioned. They're not $20, $30 a month either. So it's only a few $100s.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, you're right. Those are really the order management systems. I'm thinking more in terms of, because we're running a warehouse. So for me, I'm looking for the softwares that are running the warehouse where multiple customers can log in and have their own portals, and then the warehouse has the roll up. So that's where I was going with that. But you're absolutely right. There's another one, Skubana. That was also bought recently by Extensive. Then there's Fishbowl. There's a whole slew of them. But you're right. They're $5.99, $6.99, $7.99 a month. Then but yeah, if you're selling on Amazon, and have a Shopify site and a couple other channels, and you have one or more 3PLs, you have to have something like this, keeping everything in sync. Because yes, it's true, you can run a report at the end of the month and sync up, make sure your inventory is right. But if you only have 20 in stock and you're selling on 3 channels, and an order comes in for 20 on Amazon, you've got to say it's out of stock on your Shopify, right? Or indicate it as a back order. And that has to happen within a few minutes of you actually running out of stock. And only a system can really do that, in real time. So it's important. And then especially if on the different selling channels, you call it different things. If it's different SKUs, then even more so, you need one of these systems.
Oh my God! Then
this one's out of stock on SKU 1, 2, 3. Over there, upload it. You update it, the inventory, even though you got to match it on this table. So yeah, these are very important softwares.
I mean that creating duplicate SKUs with different I tell people, don't ever go there. I mean, you're creating nightmare because now you need to have a master SKU. But this opens up another discussion, because what you are talking about is your need as the 3PL in terms of systems. But the real need, what is the driver here? The driver is the orders, right? And orders, where do the orders come from? Orders come from channels.
That's right.
And what satisfies the orders? It's the same inventory. So, and where is the inventory? It's at 3PL. So the driver, since the driver is the orders, your infrastructure has to accommodate the driver. So that is the order management system / inventory management system. However, those systems do not satisfy your needs, but you are a critical part of the operation, and that is the discussion, which means that your inventory management system has to integrate with the 3PL's inventory management system. And that's the need in 3PL. So what I recommend my clients is they say, okay, if they have their own warehouse, and having your own warehouse is not an operation that will scale. So I say, you need a 3PL. So, okay, well, where do we start? We go search for 3PLs. I say, no. What is your order management system? Go check their integrations with 3PLs. Get a list of the 3PLs they come readily integrated with. Start there. What is your take on that?
So I think if your business is larger, that's a really good way to do it, because it's just going to work. Hopefully, I mean, if they're advertising that they have, that integration. My only concern with it is that for a lot of the more advanced services that you might need with kitting and other things that multi-channel sellers need, you may want to work with smaller 3PLs that may not have these integrations on these large websites. So on these large OMS applications. So but you can also look at what it takes to integrate. So for example, like if I were going to buy a subscription to an OMS, I might want to make sure that there's an open API as part of it, so that yes, these are the 3PLs that they integrate with off the bat. But if I wanted to do it with another partner, I don't need to bring in the implementation team from my OMS. I just need to bring in my implementation team from the 3PL and just say, this is how you communicate with our OMS. Build it. I wouldn't want to have an OMS where I had to, get them to build out their side and my 3PL to build out our side and try and coordinate a cross-company, implementation. That would be a project, that you probably don't want to deal with. But if it had an open API that you can integrate with, I don't have any problem. I wouldn't have any problem choosing a 3PL that just has to script up, because at the end of the day, you're pulling for new orders, you're posting back the tracking number. And if the OMS is doing what it's supposed to be doing, it's going to communicate out to the selling channels what the inventory updates are. So it's really just pull orders and post tracking numbers. There's nothing else.
And also POs, shipments, receiving, inbound.
True. Yes, you can integrate that as well. But I'm talking about like the daily fulfillment.
Yeah.
But even still, it's like, what are we talking, like 5 calls, right? I mean, it's not as overwhelming.
It's not the end of the world. Yeah.
As long as the OMS has the data structure that's like, this is how you pass the data, and you look at it and you say, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. It's okay to integrate with that, no problem.
Well, I mean, the point that you highlight about you have 20 pieces in stock, you receive an Amazon order, stock is depleted, that needs to be passed on to Shopify, show it out of stock or back order or whatever. So I had an experience. It was those days where it's right at the height of the pandemic. So I was working with this client out of Minnesota. They produced air filtration masks. So, and they had been in business for like 4 or 5 years before. Yeah. It was mainly for woodworkers and construction workers and people like that. So of course, COVID hits, suddenly business is going through the roof. So, and of course, they had zero processes. They had no batch processing. They had QuickBooks desktop version. They had no integration, no nothing. And they use this ridiculous system. I forgot the name now. They sit between Shopify and QuickBooks Enterprise. I forgot. They connect. Anyway, so, and it was supposed to update the inventory on the website.
Yeah. So
one day we are running around like headless chicken trying to keep up with stuff because B2B orders started pouring in. And they had faxes coming in. They had no. So I'm trying to figure out. So one day I see the customer service lady. She says to me, Nick, do you think you could help me with this? And I said, what do you need? She says, well, I have 900 orders to cancel. Is there any way for me to do that quickly?
Right.
And I said, wait a minute. This is like today it happened, or it's been building up? She says, no, this is today. Yesterday I had 800.
Wow.
So every day I said, but wait a minute, where is it coming from? She says, I don't know. It's coming through the website. We don't have it. Guess what? What you described was not happening.
Oh my God.
Because they had no inventory management. Right. They were never receiving the POs, right? In your point at the beginning, your receiving starts with the right receiving. Right. They were not receiving POs into stock. They were adjusting the Shopify quantities by hand. Of course, once COVID hit, there was no more adjusting by hand.
Right.
Orders were, and people looking, they were like, they are thirsty. They are in a desert, right? So they find masks, they buy it. So that's what they had. They had no syncing inventory, no accurate inventory in the first place, and no syncing, no nothing. So the point you're making is this is not only needed for you, but you also need to sync it with the 3PL so that you know what's happening.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And then when you throw into returns into the picture,
Oh, yeah.
and removal orders, it gets complex.
Yeah, it does. So these, I always remember the time that Amazon was toying with the idea of delivering with drones.
Yeah.
And
I think it's still happening, but maybe a little delay.
Yeah. I mean, it's I'm talking about now, I guess, like 4 or 5 years. So one of the, I forget the name, Charlie, talk show host, but he always does one-on-one interviews. Amazon always sponsored this show. So he was invited. Jeff Bezos gave him the walkthrough and he said, okay, today we're going to announce something. That's why he invited him. And so he takes him into a room, big screen, and he shows the drone delivery. And of course, he's completely taken, says, how does this work? And blah, blah, blah. Of course, the movie is very nice. It takes off from the Amazon warehouse with the package, lands in the backyard of, somebody who has like
That's a hamburger on the grill, says the grill got hot.
Yeah. So anyway, so he said that, so typical journalist, it doesn't think about anything. It's always about making news. So he says, so when is this going to be available? So he says, oh, Charlie, this is just the model. He says, now we have to deal with what he called the redundancies. What if there is no place to land? What if there is the FAA, there's this, there's that, there's the other. So you were saying that 4 or 5 calls, excuse me, it's never 4 or 5 API calls. There's all the redundancies about the returns, the removal orders, the damage, the warehouse damage. So it's quite an integration. So yeah, I just want to summarize for the listeners' benefit, because we covered very important stuff here. This is not usually discussed. First and foremost, you are saying if you're looking for a 3PL, make sure that they offer these add-on services, because that's where you're going to set yourself apart from your competition by being able to offer things that you could otherwise not offer.
Right.
That's number one. What are those add-on services? Specifically, kitting, bundling, packs, whatever, customization. So the second thing you mentioned is you ask them about their receiving process. Ask them to describe how they would handle the redundancies of what if they come broken, if they come short, whatever, how they handle it, and make sure you are satisfied with their answer, that they give you an answer that's been thought through ahead of time, not improvising on the fly because you asked. Second. The third, you mentioned that you must have systems in place that shows the inventory at the 3PL.
Yes.
That's the right way. And also you must have systems that will integrate and sync the inventory levels at the 3PL with what's available on your website, showing what's available on your website. And if you're doing FBM, also, of course, on Amazon. So make sure that happens. And point number 4 is if you have an order management system or inventory management system, they usually come together. Make sure you start looking in their integrations of the 3PLs that they are integrated with. And when you are checking them, make sure that they can offer these add-on services, so that just because they have the integration, you're not denying yourself the capabilities. And if you don't have an order management system, get one. But while getting one, make sure that whatever you're picking has integration with some 3PLs that you like.
Or an open API that you can easily communicate with.
Yes, absolutely. And that was the last thing. So, and if there isn't, then get the kind of system, order management system, that will come with an API and make sure that your 3PL company has a system that also has an API or can integrate with another API.
Exactly.
Is that,
Easy, right?
have I left anything out?
No, it's good. It's really, this is what it takes to go from just, you could be a very successful FBA seller, and that's awesome. But I mean, what you can really do if you take the whole product to the market with all its variations and have those systems. So yeah, I think setting that level of professionalism up and taking ownership of that data, getting that to OMS, getting your integrations right. Yeah, I think it's really a great way to set the next leg of success. If that means going on multiple channels, if it means increasing the number of SKUs, adding personalization services, all these things you can do put you in another class of seller.
Yeah. So, Marshall, I want to ask you another question. So, I spent several years in logistics, so I'm very familiar with logistics. So, from those years, it's many, many years ago, but from those years, I learned one thing. Transportation sector is going to have the pulse of the economy, and it's a good indicator because as soon as the economy goes down, transportation sector is going to know before anybody else, and equally when it's coming back. So you are right in the heart of that logistics business, and we are recording this in October of 2022, beginning.
You're gonna put me on the spot for a prediction.
Yeah, so we have no idea what's coming our way. So I mean, yesterday, the last week of September, stock market it was major bloodbath. We know inflation. Nothing is looking good. And I also see from Amazon sellers that e-commerce volume is down. So we're not seeing good. However, they don't bother me because this happens. It comes in cycles and there's something good coming. So give me your take of what's coming. What do you think? Where are we going? And I'm sure that it's not going to happen overnight. There will be other bad situations. So you've been around, you've been an Amazon seller. Give us your take on what people should look out for.
Well, I think the competition matrix is going to change because, for example, everybody in China wanted to sell on Amazon for a long time, and then it got a little less popular as the renminbi appreciated and the cost of manufacturing increased. And then also, when COVID hit, the logistics shipping containers went through the roof. It used to be like $1,500 to ship a 40-foot from China to California, and then it went up to like $35,000. Nobody can make money, at those prices. But now, the renminbi's, the Chinese currency is cheaper. The logistics costs have come down to $3,500, $4,500 a container. And, the economy is not as good over there. And so a lot of people are interested, again, selling into the US and making, US dollars. So I think from that perspective, there's another wave of competition coming, that may have started to cool a little bit recently. But on the other hand, the supply chains are complex, they're unstable. Anything you can do to either manufacture or top up your inventory or have some sort of capability in the US, I think is very important. There's really no way to guarantee stability otherwise at this point. I don't think the global situation is going to get better in the next 5 years. I think we're going through some fundamental changes, and it's just going to be dodgy for a while. So keep your supply chain tight, keep your costs down. Stability is more important than anything else. And, there's going to be a lot of winners over the next few months or years. And it's not necessarily going to be the people who have optimized their chains, mass producing in China and just shipping stuff over. Things could change a lot, so try to be closer to the customer.
So that means that maybe create alternative production resources in the US, bring the manufacturing back to the US. Is that an option?
Well, I'm not selling currently, so I can't tell you the exact costs. But for example, if if your product requires, shiny plastic boxes, right? I mean, that's just something that you really have to make in China. But what if it's really just a plastic thing that could be done with plastic molding injection, and then put in a regular carton? I mean, why does it have to be done in China? Contact fabricators here, find companies that do plastic molding injection, ideally send them the mold from the Chinese factory, if not, at least, the CAD, and, just kind of get pricing, right? And even if it's more expensive, is it more expensive including all the landed cost? Is it more expensive including the landed cost and the extra inventory you have to keep to handle the 8 weeks, delays from purchase order to the time you get it? Is it that much more expensive? And maybe you can do like 20% of your production in the US, and 80% in China. So at least if you had to change it, you can just ramp up something that's already going, as opposed to having to start and scramble. So yeah, I think there's a lot of products that can be made in the US, and you just have to look at what is really involved in making it. And yeah, I think that is happening. I don't think it's just going to the US by any means, but yeah, there's a lot of opportunity in the US right now. It's a really
there's also
exciting time, actually.
South America, South America, Central America. I mean, there are different places for manufacturing. But something you said, that's actually a big threat. With the competition in China, the economy, and everything, and therefore a new flux of Chinese sellers pouring into Amazon Marketplace. That's not good news for the US sellers.
It's not really, but you got to do something different, right? That's where the personalization comes in. I mean, can a Chinese seller arrange for that to happen in the US? Yeah, of course they can. But somebody who really knows the culture, look, it's just like Americans selling into China. They're not going to do it as well as somebody who's not there. The Chinese sellers are incredible, and if you really think about how much they sell on Amazon, it's incredible. But a lot of it's cookie cutter stuff, and it's even the listings still kind of look like it's not up to the same level of English and things like that. And God bless them. I mean, they're making money. But if you are in the US and you really understand the culture, and you can get down to the deeper niches and putting packagings together to offer interesting bundles, or approach it from a use case perspective instead of just one product, and offer the personalization or whatever other services, I think you could still really, really, really set yourself apart. It's not just about the price; it's about the.
I mean, as you know, Amazon implemented this new feature. You can see it when you do a search and search results come up. You can see the flag of the country of the seller. Right. So I wonder what Amazon's attitude will be if suddenly that 20 search results that are organic, if out of the 20, 14 of them were Chinese flags. I doubt very much they're going to allow that,
Well, but also if you think about it, if really it is just a Chinese factory selling on Amazon versus an American factory, American company buying the same product from a Chinese factory and selling it on Amazon, then really what is the economic reason for the US seller to exist? I mean, they're not adding any value. So if you think about well, how do I add value? Well, again, you have to solve something that the customer needs that, a Chinese seller can't do. And the biggest gap really is the fact that, they're so far away. That increases the shipping costs. What happens if COVID comes back? Well, if you have your production in the US, or even just 20% in the US, but can ramp up, then on the next wave, when all the sellers who are overseas are dependent on shipping, and shipping goes back to 30,000 a container, well, here you are with a whole bunch of stock, and 3 hours away from your 3PL is your manufacturer, right? It sounds hard to do, but it's really not. You just have to. I mean, China's really spoiled people because you go there and you go to the Canton Fair and everything is huge and amazing, and the public transport, and you pay with your phone for everything, and it's really an amazing place, and you get like sparkles in your eye, when you get there and you go to the factories and all that. But, if you really look at what are the machines and what are they actually doing, it's not that complex. And a lot of the stuff, like, for example, if your products are paper or wood-based, that's not really cost effective in China. It's actually more cost effective to do it in the US. So a lot of different products, like if you don't need to do some sort of environmentally harmful process, like, for example, blowing plastic bags, okay, you're not going to make your balloons in the US, but there's no reason why, if you're making envelopes, why you can't make that in the US. If you're making a plastic component, if you're doing different types of items. So again, it really just depends. But these are where the US sellers can say, hey, look, I'm here. It's not just that I'm a US flag on the search results page. It's that by being a US seller, I am able to do these things. I am able to organize, more complex things with shorter lead times, thus, being more efficient with my use of capital and my time to market. Well, now it's like, oh, you're a US seller. I want to buy from that, right? I don't want to wait for whatever.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the US sellers, even though they have the US flag, they're manufacturing in China. So what's the difference? Yeah, categorically, there isn't any. But I frankly would not want to see 14 Chinese flags on a 20 search results page. It's at that point. It's not the true representation of the marketplace, because there is Amazon.com, there is Amazon.co.uk, and there is Amazon.co. So there is a reason for that. But then there is also argument for free trade and everything. I think it's hard. At the end of the day, it has to be the consumer's choice. But this is Amazon's backyard. So I would like to know if that happened, what Amazon would do. I'm sure they'll come up with something.
I mean, Bezos always said, your margin is my opportunity, right? So,
Yeah.
I don't think, he's not in charge anymore, but I don't think Amazon cares. They just want to bring the cheapest stuff to the market, get all the customers and make money on the logistics.
Well, I will argue.
I don't know if they really care, to be honest, which flag it is.
Well, so you're right. Amazon wants the most competitive. However, Amazon has made enemies out of these luxury brands. They don't want to be. Amazon is a curse word. So they are trying very hard not to be perceived as the cheapest place. So if they embrace this Chinese influx of new sellers that make things even cheaper, by race to the bottom does not make anybody money. So plus it will really destroy their efforts to align themselves with the luxury brand. So I guess we'll soon see. It's an open question. Time will tell, I guess. So,
but it is evolving. I mean, we have customers importing from India some really nice products. We have some customers importing from Europe. I have a new customer. They make everything in the UK that they're selling. So it isn't just a China story. It really is a global story. But because the Chinese production is so dominant in the world, absolutely. Absolutely, you're seeing an outsized, representation on the search results page. Absolutely, but hey, let's fight for those spots back. Let's
exactly.
do it again, right?
Yeah. So Marshall, this was great. So we've never had this discussion before. It's the first time on the podcast at 3PL. It's everybody's need. Everybody's using it. Everybody's doing something. But at least now they have an educated approach straight from the horse's mouth. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up?
Born in Brooklyn, grew up in New Jersey, went to school in Pennsylvania, went to China, and then came back when COVID hit in January 2020, now living in Pennsylvania.
So you returned back to the US because of COVID, or as it happened?
In China, if your kid is not with a Shenzhen, like a local ID card as a Chinese person, they can't go to the public school. So it's very expensive to do private school, and we did it for a bunch of years. But it just got to the point where the kids' education wasn't really what we were looking for, and also the cost was prohibitive. So we had already bought a house and had prepared to move back to the US, but a year later. And then when COVID hit, it was like they were closing the border, and we had not even 48 hours to decide, whether to stay or to go. And because we had already bought a house and we had already planned to go, but a year later, we just went. We went on a 2-week return ticket, thinking, we'll get there. Hopefully everything will be okay in China. We'll come back. And the rest is history, as you know.
Wow, so you were living in China when COVID hit, but you had already bought a house.
Yeah.
So within 48 hours, you had to decide, you had to leave.
That's right.
But what was the 2-week return ticket?
Because so at that time, nobody knew about COVID yet. We had just heard in Shenzhen that there was you should get masks, and something was going on. And it was Chinese New Year, so everyone was out of Shenzhen. They had returned to their hometowns for Chinese New Year, and then like a week or two later, they were supposed to be coming back after Chinese New Year ended, and so basically they shut the border to Hong Kong, which was right where we were, because I guess everybody was coming back to Shenzhen in 2 weeks, and they didn't want it to be going across the border. I'm assuming. So we booked a 2-week ticket return, thinking that we'll go to the U.S. just to make sure we're out, in case the border. But we fully expected to be returning in a couple of weeks when this, whatever it was, blew over, because nobody knew what it was yet. So we had taken my wife's parents, with us. I mean, we were like, oh, we'll be back in 2 weeks. But, we couldn't get back.
So your wife is Chinese?
Yes.
Chinese. And so you brought her parents with you, and then that was it. So when did this happen?
January 2020. We landed January 30th.
Okay, so of course at that point the Chinese government already knew the extent of this. This is the biggest country.
It was like the very beginning, before it was even in the news in the U.S. Like nobody knew anything.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's they already knew a lot of the things, never shared it. That was the biggest unfortunate decision they made. So
this whole thing, end to end, was it's just a mess. Unfortunately, the whole world has changed permanently because of that.
Yeah.
But I mean that it's now part of our history.
So what happened was when this whole thing started, and they started to call it pandemic, because as you know, it wasn't called pandemic first. So
right.
They started to call it pandemic. I'm not trying to sound like a smart aleck, but I said this is not a pandemic. This is a global cleansing movement.
Yeah.
Cleansing of business models, cleansing of relationships, cleansing of lifestyles, cleansing of the unhealthy, cleansing of the elderly. They all got hit, right?
It's I mean, this is a massive global change.
That was
repercussions will be felt forever.
Yeah, it's changed the world. So so you said you born in Brooklyn, grew up in New Jersey, and then moved to Pennsylvania. So what led you to this career path? I mean, where is it coming from?
I'm very, I guess, individualistic. I was not really into, I guess, getting a regular job or something. I worked very hard, but never why were you individualist? I mean, where is that coming from? I don't know. I like to be on my feet. I like to see new things, and I like to create things. And, I found myself from a very early age, doing my own business, different things. And was it encouraged by your parents or not? No, I don't think so. I think they would have preferred if I did better in school. But I wouldn't say it was discouraged, but, it's not necessarily encouraged. Just kind of a one-man band type of guy. Were you like one of those kids just wanted to leave home as soon as possible? I did. I wanted to get the hell out of there, So I had done a lot of, actually, my parents are big into travel, and, I'd been to Spain when I was 16 with my mom, and a couple other trips. And so I already kind of had a, I need to travel the world kind of mentality. I had studied abroad for a semester when I was in college or university. So, I guess I was predisposed to want to travel. But really, I was just trying to not have. I didn't want to wake up every day and see the same thing. I just kind of needed more input, I guess. I always needed a higher input feed than most people. So so I thought going overseas, went to China, having an intercultural marriage and family and all that. I think it adds enough complexity and interesting touches to the life that keeps you interested and keeps you going.
So you like to shake the boat. You don't like the status quo.
I think as I'm getting older, I don't mind a little bit of stability, but yeah, I mean, a new idea is a new opportunity. I always felt that way.
Yeah. So I wonder if that's because you mentioned you traveled when you were real young. If that kind of got played into your DNA somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the more you stay in one place, the deeper roots you get, and the more you move around, the more breadth you cover. And I guess I'm just one of those kind of big breath, less depth. And now I'm spending more time in one place and building some roots here, which is fun. But yeah, my 20s and 30s were really just traveling around, and I was doing consulting, implementing ERP systems and PLM, product lifecycle management systems, at different retailers. So I was working in, Dubai, Australia, France, South Africa, Germany, UK.
But as a consultant, you were doing this as a consultant, independent?
For 8 years, I worked for a company called Bamboo Rose, and I was based in Asia, and they're a US company. And I was leading these implementations of this company's software at different retailers around the world. So that was a formal employment, but still as a consultant through them, to each of our customers, which were the retailers. So I've seen, a lot of retail. I've seen a lot of manufacturing. I've seen a lot of logistics. Now I have, the warehouse experience, and, underpinning all that, I guess, is my interest in technology and IT and, blockchain and all these things and economics and how to tie it all together and kind of create value out of nowhere, where people weren't really looking for it per se. And it's just fun.
But the biggest unknown is, of course, being an entrepreneur. You're always heading into the unknown, trying to create something out of nothing, right? So
there you go. And a lot of it is just out of our own need over the years. It's like, this doesn't work exactly as I expected, and you hit a point with a lot of softwares, especially where now it's just not doing what you need. And now you're just doing what the software does. And you got to make a decision sometimes, like, am I a company that should be conforming to a piece of software, or am I really trying to do something that software wasn't built to do because I'm breaking ground? And sometimes you have to realize when you should just listen to the software, but other times you have to say, hey, I'm building something here, and I need to build it from scratch or it won't exist. And that's the fun stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, first of all, it's never about making money. Second, it's not about what the product does or what kind of product you're looking to create, but it's the experience of creating something that offers value. And then once you do it, then you start looking for the next thing, the next thing. And it's always an unknown that you are taking on.
And I like business solutions because, if somebody will spend like 3 hours to try and download a movie, for free instead of paying, iTunes $1.99, but if it's a business and they think it's going to help their business grow, I mean, they'll open their wallet and put $1,000 a month out like it's nothing if they feel like they're going to get that value.
Yeah,
right? And if you put them on a 30-day free trial and then they get into it, so because you can sell business services for more money, you have more money to use for the R&D and for the operations.
Yeah.
So you don't need to get those million customers each paying $1.99. You don't need that mass appeal. You just got to find a passionate group of users that are specifically like-minded in what you're trying to build. And if you can just even get 50 users sometimes, you can have a business just off of that.
Absolutely.
So it's really interesting, hitting the business markets. And as running a 3PL here, I mean, we just see so many different types of products and so many different ways of doing business and the different models. And it's fascinating. I mean, it's really like there's no shortage of ways, to go to market. It's fascinating.
Yeah. So, Marshall, give us your contact information. How can people reach you?
You can email logistics@shipitdone.com. Go to our website, shipitdone.com. Go to our Google Maps page, shipitdone.com, ShipItDone 3PL warehouse. But yeah, just feel free to contact me for anything. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you very much. This was very valuable. People will appreciate it. I have no doubt. And thank you for being here.
Thank you, Nick.
And that brings us to the end of another episode. And I'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Be sure and subscribe, rate, and review our show. And be sure and share an episode with a friend. And thank you so much for being with us today. We'll see you next week here on Amazon Legends.